Welcome to a video on conditional probability using contingency tables. In this video, we'll focus on understanding how to calculate conditional probability when we're given a two-way table. Let's get started. Let's take a look at what is conditional probability. Conditional probability is the probability of an event occurring given that another event has already occurred. It's calculated using the formula P of event 2 given event 1 is equal to P of event 1 and event 2 occurring divided by P of E1 occurring. Just a note about notation, when you see P of E2 with a vertical bar, then E1, this is read the probability of event 2 occurring given that event 1 has already occurred. One thing that's really critical when you're calculating conditional probability is you need to look at the event that has already occurred. So when you see a phrase given that some event has already occurred, this is actually where we're going to focus on when we calculate these probabilities. This will become more clear when we look at a few examples. So let's go ahead and do that now. For this video, we'll be using the contingency table that displays study method versus grade. I've linked a copy of this contingency table in the video description below. A survey was conducted on a group of students regarding their preferred study method, whether they use flashcards or practice tests, and their average test grade, A, B, or C. We will assume that a student is selected at random. Let's go ahead and calculate the following probabilities. Let's find the probability that a student received a C given that they used practice tests. That last part of the sentence, given that they use practice tests, is the key phrase that tips me off that I'm looking at a conditional probability. Given that they use practice tests establishes an event that already occurs. This tells us that we know the student that is selected at random has already established that they use practice tests to study. So for the purposes of this problem, when we calculate conditional probability, we'll only be focusing on these students who indicate they use practice tests. Now let's take a look at how the formula would work. This problem asks us to find the probability that the student receives a C given they use practice tests. To find this probability, we'll find the number of practice test users who got a C and divide that by the total number of practice test users. Note, not the total number of students in the survey. For conditional probability, we're only looking at the established condition. In this case, it's the students who use practice tests. So we can see that the number of practice test users who got a C is 19, and the total number of practice test users from this survey was 50. So our probability that the student received a C given they use practice tests is 19 out of 50. Let's use our calculator to convert this to a decimal rounded to 4 places. As a decimal, this would be 0.38. Occasionally, you'll be asked to report decimals as a percentage. In this case, this would be 38%. Let's take a look at another example that sounds very similar to this one, but the answer will be very different. In this example, we're asked to find the probability that the student uses practice tests given that they received a C. So in this case, we know that the condition that has already been established is that the student received a C. So we'll only be focusing on the group of students from this survey who indicated they have an average test grade of a C. Let's take a look at how the formula would work here. We want to find the probability that the student uses practice tests given that they received a C. So we're going to look for the number of practice test users who got a C divided by the total number of students who got a C. From this table, we can see that the number of practice test users who got a C was 19. Dividing that by the total number of students who got a C is 27. So this probability would be 19 out of 27. While our numerator is the same as the previous problem, the denominator is different. This is because the given event for the conditional probability is different than in the previous one. Let's use our calculator to convert this to a decimal. As a decimal rounded to 4 places, this would be 0.7037. As a percentage, this would be 70.37%. Let's summarize. Conditional probability is the probability of an event occurring given that another event has already occurred. Always look for that phrase given to establish the event that has already occurred. In contingency tables, it's easy to calculate using the values already organized in rows and columns. Here are a couple tips to remember. Identify the given condition or event 1. This determines the row or column total you'll use in the denominator. Then find the cell where both conditions E1 and E2 are true. This is your numerator. Divide the 2 out, and that will be your probability. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.